Welcome to Real Christianity. My name is Dale Partridge. Today is a special episode with my friend Trevor West, who is here. He's a leader at our church. He's also the guy that's usually behind the camera.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking about my story on a 4-part series, Finding Christ in Chronic Illness.
Yep.
And we'll talk a little bit more about why we're having this discussion on this podcast in just a minute. But if you're a regular listener and you've just been following along for Real Christianity, thank you. You can always listen to these episodes at relearn.org or anywhere that podcasts are found. And if you've been supporting us through the purchase of our books, you can find all of our books there. You can find all of our resources. The forthcoming Relearn app is getting ready to launch. I just got off of paternity leave, and it's just been a while since we've been in the studio.
Yes, it has.
So Trevor's here. Trevor, you're married, your kids, you've also struggled with chronic illness. Give us a little bit before we kind of dive in.
Yeah, so been married for 14 years to my wife, Julia. We have 5 beautiful kids, ages 11 to 1-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I have been on a similar path. We've dealt with chronic illness for the past 10 years now, since 2013. Was diagnosed with Crohn's and celiac disease, and it was really a journey that the Lord put us on and grew us closer to Him, and so this is a conversation that is very near and dear to me, and I'm excited to have it.
Yeah, and it's not just that we're having a conversation just about me from someone who's never experienced some of these things.
Right.
Trevor and I have also been basically around each other every single day for like a year and a half.
Yep.
And so he's got to see into a little bit of our life and how that plays out. So we got 5 questions that Trevor's going to ask me, and we'll just be having a discussion as we go through. And I think this, over the next month, this series, I think will be helpful because there's a lot of sick people in the church.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, why did you think it was important to have a series on chronic illness?
Yeah, so chronic illness is something that's plaguing more and more people today. I think that I have some stats here. I think it's 44% of older millennials born between 1981 and 1988, which is us. You're 86?
85.
85. Okay, we're both 85. That are in that category, 44% are having been diagnosed with at least one chronic health condition. That means like our age range, almost half, and I would say arguably half because there's other studies that have showed more,
right,
of the people in our age range have something going on.
Yep.
And, we all look at our grandparents who, eat TV dinners and smoke cigarettes and live until their 90s. And they're like, food allergies, what do you, pansy, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so another poll said 50% of millennials have at least one food allergy.
Right.
I mean, look at our restaurant world. Look at Whole Foods and Sprouts.
Yeah.
And, I'm not kidding. Yesterday, I just spent $150 buying low histamine, unaged beef from a farm in San Diego, that essentially, well, that's at least where their packing plant is, that sends out this, specific health.
Very, very niche health condition.
Yeah. Exactly. They make meat for people that struggle with mast cell activation syndrome,
which most people don't even have to think about.
Yeah. And so this is a weird world that we live in.
Yeah.
I always remind people that we are the only generation that grew up without organic food. I mean, every generation before us, maybe the 70s and 60s were kind of brutal, but
organic didn't have to be a thing because everything that was edible was organic.
Yeah. And so this is, we are certainly eating the worst food, having the worst clothing, having the worst environments to live in at toxicity levels than any other generation. So there's something going on here. I think everybody knows, like, hey, why is everybody that's young sick?
Yeah.
And some people talk about vaccines. Some people talk about, air pollution. Some people talk about the food products. Yeah. Some people talk about the pharmaceutical industry.
Sure.
Some people talk about air quality and environmental toxins and plastics. And so there's a lot of factors.
All play a part.
Right. So again, back to this question, like why do I think it's important for us to have this conversation? There's two quotes I want to share. I don't know who said these quotes, but everything is super important until you're sick. Then you realize there was only one thing that was really important, which is your health. Now, I know this is probably a secular quote. So we know that there's other things that are important, but you get the emphasis of the quote. Another one was, quote, "A healthy person wants 1,000 things. The sick person only wants one."
Yeah.
Last night, I was had the privilege to pray over a member of our church. His mom is in the last days of her life.
Right.
And I got a chance to pray over her. And she is dying of cancer. And she was in the living room of this church member's home. And she can't talk really. She can open her eyes. She can, maybe whisper something. And I was praying over her and she was tearing up as she was praying. She's still feeling, she's still understanding. But the thing that she really wants at that moment is just the one thing, is just to be healthy again.
Yeah, we all take that for granted.
We do. And so there is certainly a discussion to be had around the Christian. I'm the last guy that's going to go, I'm the advocate for self-care. Okay. Like I'm not that guy. But what I am going to say is that I believe it's important that we are stewarding our health in a way that allows us to be productive and fruitful for the kingdom of God.
Amen.
I'm not the guy that's like, go do the gym selfies and make sure that you're like obsessive about supplementation or, I'm not like the fitness genre dude either.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, look sexy. My wife already thinks that I'm sexy. So I'm trying to just get healthy and stay healthy.
Right.
And we'll talk more about, I guess, what that means.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Question number 2 is, when did you first become sick? What was the cause? And what were your symptoms?
So I first became sick in 2019, but it's kind of a complex thing, right? Because just like you, when did you first become sick?
Right.
It's like, well, there was...
Can pinpoint some things, but it started long before I started realizing I actually was sick.
And there was like waves where you're having symptoms and they go away,
right?
And then you get better and then they get worse. And then all of a sudden there's a point where you realize I'm sick.
Yeah.
And for me, it was I would say, as early as 2005, I was having symptoms, but I was young, right? I'm like, I'm just going to push through.
Yeah.
You're naive.
Muscle through.
Yeah. You're naive to those things.
Yep.
And then 2019, my wife got bit by a spider or something. And she had this big bullseye rash, the size of like, I don't know, maybe a coffee cup on her leg.
Wow.
And a doctor was like, a friend of ours who was a doctor was like, hey, I think that's Lyme disease. And we went to the doctor. The doctor's like, there's no Lyme disease in Oregon. And so, we went to our friend who was a naturopathic doctor and said, no, like that's like a classic sign of Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And so we took her to the doctor because within like a week, maybe 2, she was bedridden. Her joints were inflamed, having all the classic signs of Lyme disease.
Right.
And the doctor put her on antibiotics, which, there's 2 lines of thinking, right? I actually personally go for more of the natural long-term, slower.
Antibiotics have their place, but it's not a one size fits all kind of thing.
No, but it happened to work for her. She was on it for 6 months of antibiotics.
Wow.
And she got better. Now, what we didn't know is that Lyme disease is sexually transmitted. Seems like every other country knows that.
Okay.
But that was sexually transmitted. I ended up showing up positive for Lyme. She tested positive for Lyme for like what I would say CDC level Lyme disease. So she was, this doctor that was up there in Oregon was a complete fool for dismissing the reality that we actually had a confirmation by a test I forgot the name of the test, Western blot, I think is what the test called, something like that.
Yeah.
The best test to do for Lyme disease is, oh man, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
There is, if I don't say it in this one, I'll say it in the next one because I'll put it in my notes. But I got sick 2019. I started getting really sick and my body started shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
And 2021 was the peak of me being like, I feel like I was going to die.
Yeah.
2022 was the start of healing. 2023 is continuing to be chronically ill.
Yeah.
In terms of the cause, I think it's a combination of genetics, lifestyle,
Sure.
Your current health, your environmental toxins, your viruses, your bacteria, your parasites, your microbes, all the things that are there's like, it's, again, people always want to think that it's just one thing, like, oh, you got sick because you got Lyme disease. Well, a lot of people get bit by ticks and don't collapse on Lyme disease.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people live in mold and don't collapse on mold.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people...
One thing compounding on top of another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've heard one doctor explain it that it's like a boiling pot. And, you know, when you get sick is the moment where it starts to overflow.
Yeah.
And so you have to turn the heat down on all the things that cause you to be sick.
Yep. Yeah, I know that all too well. Having to cut out sugars or caffeine or, you know, any other, gluten for me was a big one. So yeah, there's just like little things that you have to hit that calm other things down so that you can then start addressing the illness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's way more complex than you think.
Yep.
I also tested positive for Bartonella. I tested positive for Babesia, which has their own symptoms, but mold seemed to be the thing that actually demonstrated or presented itself as the main culprit to making me collapse.
Yeah, that was the root cause.
That was I'm not going to say it's the root cause. I'm just going to say that I was so sick already that once we started having mold, and you know, we didn't get our house tested because it's one of those things that we figured out after we left, really, because I took the mycotoxins. It's the Great Plains mycotoxin mold test.
Okay.
And they came back with basically off the charts with Aspergillus mold, which is the common mold that you're going to see in someone's house. And they told me that, you know, I thought at first I was thinking, oh, that's it. All I have to do is get rid of the mold out of my body and everything's going to be fine.
Sure.
But that is not the case. Anyone that's chronically ill, and I feel bad because there's all these mold Facebook groups and chat rooms and things like that people go in there and they're looking for the one stop, like they think it's something that you can just solve versus it being an actual complex, robust issue with your whole body.
Yeah.
And they just want the one stop, fix it. What drug can I take? What supplement can I take to fix these things? So that was the main cause for me, is the mold kind of threw it off. And we didn't know. Dude, no one's house, unless it's like the basement in the South.
Right.
You know, no one's like, we like living in mold. Like, no one's trying to live in mold.
Yeah. Not a good thing generally.
Yeah, not a good thing generally. And if you have mold, you're generally going to fix it. But mold happens in like a water leak that happened in your house 6 years ago.
Yep. Sticks around.
You know, or a thing in the ceiling you don't know about, or something behind the wall, or in your crawl space under, or your washing machine.
Right.
Which I think was the culprit in our house in great degree.
Yeah. And
we... all of a sudden, you know, we don't realize it, but I'm just slowly inhaling mold spores. Yeah. And a lot of people ask me, well, Dale, why are you sick? And why aren't your kids sick and your wife sick? And I have to remind them, like, not everybody processes toxins the same way. And so you can be falling apart.
Right.
And your your wife's not.
Yeah.
Like Veronica's body detoxed much better than I did.
Yeah.
But me and Honor,
Yep.
That's
what I was going to say. 1 out of 3 of your kids has had some sort of symptoms.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you've seen it.
Yeah.
He's got pandas or PANS. It's basically lots of motor tics, neurological.
Yeah.
You'll sometimes hear him. He'll be sitting there and humming.
Yeah.
And he
stutters are like accompanying that.
Or he's constantly moving his fingers, and the mold essentially threw off his neurological system.
Yep.
So symptoms. Okay. Again, this is my story, but I just want to hear just from you, Trevor. Just give me, because you're dealing with another side of this. What are your symptoms that you had in the beginning?
Yeah. So symptoms for like celiac and Crohn's are just, bowel movement issues, things that where you have just major cramping in your stomach. So much, for me, there was so much inflammation in my gut that I could maybe eat 4 bites of food and then was completely full. And then within like 15 to 30 minutes was experiencing cramps after that. And just major fatigue. You're not producing energy because you're not able to absorb the nutrients and minerals that you would normally get from the foods and the water that you drink.
And you were to the point where you were, blood in the toilet.
Yep. Yeah. It sounds bad because it is. It was not
a pleasant time.
It was not a pleasant thing. So it's a hard thing to watch, especially when you were like, for me, it was, I was 27, 28, seeing that and thinking like, well, this is just something I'm going through. I'll get better eventually. To then realizing, like you said, it's going to be a lifelong, or at least a decades long journey.
Yeah. So this is, for me, mine was more total body. I listed out my symptoms, but
because yours was that neurological effect,
and it was like essentially an immune deficiency.
Yeah.
Like my immune system was attacked. And so the symptoms I listed out, I had low body temperature, Raynaud's disease, which is basically cold hands and cold feet to their point where they hurt, they're painful, stomach pain, dizziness, constipation, prostate pain. I was going to the bathroom like an old man in the sense of, I couldn't go because there was just inflammation everywhere. I started having muscle twitches. When I talk about muscle twitches, I'm talking like thousands a day.
Yeah.
Like I have videos in my phone and you like look at my calf, and on my calf, you could just watch it's like my skin was rippling. Yeah. Because my neurological system was just not functioning right. Wow. Heart palpitations. I had random hives around my body for some reason. Kidney pain, kidney stones.
Yeah.
And so what you realize is that there's mold is high in oxalates. Oxalates are the cause of kidney stones, one cause of kidney stones. And so you're breathing in this stuff.
Just building up a kidney stone, essentially.
Building up a kidney stone, yeah. And so that was I literally almost passed out on the floor of the waiting room at the hospital. Yeah. I passed the stone without any medicine. And I'll tell you this, once it passes, it doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you think when you don't have a kidney stone as a man, you think that it hurts when it's passing through the situation.
Right.
That's not what it hurts. It hurts when it's passing from what's called the ureters or whatever, from your kidney to your bladder.
Right.
And so you just feel like someone's got a dull knife stabbing you in the side.
Yeah.
Brutal. Yeah. Other symptoms I had were gastritis, insomnia, skin cancer. I had skin cancer on my forehead, air hunger, which is terrible as it sounds.
Yeah.
It's this idea that you
can't get enough
air.
Yeah.
And you've seen me have air hunger.
Yep.
I still struggle with that symptom here and there. I had what I still have what's called a patulous eustachian tube. It's when you lose a bunch of weight. So I got sick and I lost a bunch of weight, and your eustachian tubes lose the fatty tissue inside of your ear, and you essentially can't keep your eustachian tube closed, right? You want your eustachian tube to stay closed until you yawn and it opens up and lets air pressure out, right? mine will sometimes stay open. And then it sounds like I can hear my own breathing. I can hear my own voice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's maddening. There's a surgery to get fixed. Lord willing, I'll just get fat again.
Yeah.
I mean, not unhealthy fat, but I'm pretty skinny.
Yeah. How many people, by the way, do you think yawned when you said the word yawn?
Yeah. I don't know. Is that a thing? I know if you see people.
Yeah.
If you hear.
I almost did. I had to hold back a little
really?
bit. So,
if you hear the word yawn, do you yawn?
I mean, I almost did. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, I had hair loss. My hair started to grow back a little bit more. I had ulcerative colitis, which is similar to what Trevor was dealing with. I was starting to have blood in the stool. I had liver pain, kidney pain. And then the biggest thing and the scariest thing, and Trevor's actually witnessed one of these, is a non-epileptic seizure.
Yep.
And so
sat with you through that for, 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And this is even after having taken a small dosage of the medication.
Yeah,
that you have
stops
for it.
them.
Yeah, that stops them. So it's a big deal.
So basically what happens is my body, my neurological system starts to just tank, and I start to have mast cell activation in my neurological system.
Yeah.
And I start to convulse. Now, like shivering, kind of.
Yeah.
It's the same response to shivering, but you're not necessarily cold. However, being warm happens to stop the shivering.
Yeah.
It helps at least.
Which is a symptom of the full body experience that you're going through.
Yeah, like my brain's there.
Yeah.
So I'm not like, grand mal seizure, like eyes in the back of the head, none of that.
Right.
But I'm like literally my whole body is shaking and I can't stop it.
Right.
Until I take some medicine. So what I'm saying is that this has been a pretty rough road.
I'd say so.
And I think a lot of people know that I've struggled with chronic illness, but I think people think, oh, he can't be that sick because look, he's doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that with chronic illness, it's like, I saw you looked fine.
Right.
And you're like, well, I'm only out when I feel good.
Yeah.
But at home.
And it's a roller coaster. It goes up and down. It's the next few hours you might be fine. And then, a few hours after that, you'll tank to some degree.
So you have another condition.
Yeah.
In addition to the stomach thing.
Yeah. I have chronic headaches. I've had those since I was like 15, 16 years old. And it's one of the most debilitating things. I think even more so than the Crohn's and celiac, because it's in your head, and it just is like full pain.
And when Trevor has one of these, like his whole face changes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like oh, just take some Tylenol. It's not one of those kind of headaches. It's migraine.
Yeah.
And
I'll get dark circles under my eyes. And just, my entire countenance, like the way my body, like my posture is just different. It's a very interesting experience to go through. It's almost like you can't be yourself because the pain is too much.
We've done church at Trevor's house while he was in bed nursing a headache, because church was already there. He woke up in the morning, had a headache, and we were all there worshiping, 10 families and kids everywhere. And
which sounds disruptive, but in all honesty, it was one of the most uplifting times that I've had to experience during a headache.
Yeah.
Because you're getting to hear people worship the Lord and pray, and know that they are specifically praying for you in that gathering at that time.
And you haven't had like 40 of these things. You've had like 4,000 of these things.
Yeah.
Or 400 of these things.
Exactly. It was at a point a few years ago where it was maybe 2 to 3 per week. Yeah. And a lot of them happened on weekends because my body, would build up toxin over the course of the week. And then when Saturday hit, would essentially overflow, and
your body could rest.
My body responded through.
And you couldn't
headaches.
take ibuprofen.
No.
Because it would destroy your stomach because you were trying to heal.
Yeah. Because of the gut issues, I couldn't take Advil. It has, chemical compounds within that strip the gut lining. And so there's obvious, an attachment there from me dealing with headaches for so long to, the gut issues that I I experienced. So
Yeah.
haven't had any medication on a regular basis in, I don't know, 5-6 years for like the headaches and things like that. So
yeah. And for me, I don't have any medication except I have
when it gets extreme,
I have a rescue med.
and it's like a kid's dosage.
Yeah. I take basically a kid's dosage. Yeah. It's a rescue med when I need it.
Yep.
Because I just don't want to have anything be dependent upon anything. Well, I'm constantly on the natural path as you are.
Yeah. The same thing with chronic illness. It's not just the illness we have to deal with. It's the recovery from it after you're done going through that experience.
And all the things that go on with your family, which I think is the next question.
Yeah. Next question. How did your chronic illness affect your life, family, and church?
So,
which we've kind of already touched on a little
bit. Yeah. So I'll tell you a couple things. I mean, when you're chronically ill, especially in the beginning, this is new to you. If you're on this journey right now, it's constant stress and worry in the beginning because you've just never had to fight this battle before. And especially when you start to see that it could be serious, you don't know what it is. I'll tell you what, like not having a diagnosis is more stressful than having a diagnosis because I thought I had cancer. I thought I was dying. I thought I had MS.
The wondering about what's going on is just as bad.
Any research, I mean, you just like in my brain, I have been diagnosed with all these things. Yeah,
exactly.
And there was a season where I was telling my kids before I'd go to bed, hey, if Daddy dies, just know that God's sovereign over all this, and that God predestined Dad's death at this time, and don't be angry with God if that happens. And they'd ask me questions about that, and I would have conversations because I was that sick. Yeah. And people were concerned about me. Like people were coming up to my wife privately and like, "Hey, is Dale dying?" Yeah. And so it certainly changed our life. It forced our relocation from Oregon to Arizona. Yeah. We lost everything we owned. So when you're sick with mold, you can't move with all of your stuff because the mold spores are on all your stuff. Yep. So we had to get rid of basically everything. I'm talking like 95% of what we owned. Yeah. And
the stuff you keep, you have to fix through like ozone, treatments,
certain water, and you can only keep things that are basically glass, metal, some clothing. Yeah. Then you realize it's not worth keeping the clothing after you're like, I don't need this thing. Yeah. There are some things that I've tried to salvage, like by keeping them in storage for a period of time. And like, there's some studies out there, but there's really not much you can do to get mold out of certain things. Yeah. And the mycotoxins stay there forever. And so I'll react to like certain books that I had in my office, or a table, or a painting. I'm trying to move a painting from my office that I had in my office at home 2 years ago back into my office now. And today I took it outside and let it sit in the sun for 6 hours, hoping that it would maybe, there's lots of data out there on how to remove mold, but honestly, the best thing is just get rid of it all. So we're talking like $50,000 worth of stuff. Yeah. We just lost, and there's no insurance to cover that. Yep. And that was a thing. It's now limited my environments. And you know this, Trevor, because I can't go into buildings. Yeah. Like I'm actually going to say something because this is something just recently. So, I did my pastor story hour. You remember that, right? Yeah. There's a bunch of people that are trying to hate me on the internet, kind of as always. But there's a particular woman who is like, I called the Cottonwood Library to find out if Dale had kept doing these pastor story hours just to show that he just did that for the press. Right. And what they don't know, what happened when I did that pastor story hour? What happened when I was there? Yeah. I mean, I think within maybe 5-10 minutes, you reacted to the building. Yeah. So there's, you kind of have to, you've committed to it. Yeah. So you got to get through it. Yeah. And then get out as quickly as possible. I had almost a seizure-like reaction when I left there. Yeah. Because mold loves books.
Yeah.
And you're in a bunch of old books from all these people's houses that have mold.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about how do we restore the pastor story hour and do it in somewhere like maybe our church building that we're going to get at some point, or somewhere that's a safer place.
Yeah. But that's also been an issue.
That's also been an issue.
Trying to find a church building to rent.
How many buildings have we looked at?
I would say 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find one until recently.
Well, yeah. And I was going to say, we found a handful that were just beautiful buildings.
Yeah.
That, once we got there, it was maybe, 30 minutes into it, realizing that you were reacting.
Yeah.
Which just kind of puts a halt to everything.
Yeah.
And it makes us start from scratch.
And people think I'm like, some wacko idiot. Like, he's reacting to the building.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like I can't.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Like I can't just like, hey, every time I go into your building, I have diarrhea. Like that's like, what do you want me to say? Or hey, I have a seizure
at that point
every
they
time.
would say like, TMI.
Yeah, right. And so, it's one of those things you just go. It's limited my environments.
Yeah,
we had to rent an expensive new house.
Yeah,
we are building an expensive new house.
Yeah,
not because we need an expensive house, but because
the structure actually matters at this point.
Yeah, we're trying to build with metal. We're trying to build with things that are preventative of mold. And we actually had neighbors across the street from us in our neighborhood who were dealing with the same thing. And so you've been kind of surrounded around mold people.
Yeah, totally.
I
feel like Arizona is the place that people go who are struggling with mold.
Yes.
So
it's a thing here. There's lots of people. So we're like the chronically ill church.
Yeah.
Like we're probably the only church that's going to have like 3 air purifiers in our church going, asking people not to wear giant amounts of perfume when they come to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like,
and it's not because we just dislike those things. It's simply out of a need to make sure that we can all worship together, and remain well.
Well, and it's essentially, I'll give you another fun story. Yeah. I was just recently over at another member of our church's house and they just moved into this new house and I felt okay in it. It's a newer house.
Sure.
And I walked up to him after we were in the house for a few minutes. I said, hey, guys. And I was kind of being like tongue in cheek and funny, but at the same time, I was like, guys, I love you so much.
Yeah.
But I will never be able to come over to your house if you don't unplug every one of those Glade plugins in your house. And so they have all these Glade plugins and I'm like, and then on another note, please read up on Glade plugins because they're just poison that you're breathing in your lungs. And
when you remove yourself from those things, it intensifies.
Yes.
And so you're not used to it because you don't have it in your own home. And then you come into somebody else's home and it's almost like a heightened sense of it.
Yeah. All the boomers are like, Febreze, Glade plugins, Lysol. Like nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
Right. All the millennials are like, I can't breathe. You know, I'm reacting.
Yeah.
And so
my mother-in-law will pine saw the walls in her house.
And they're not wood walls
to somehow clean it. Yeah.
Right. Are they wood walls?
No, they're just
drywall. Okay. Yeah. So this is a thing, right?
So
they like the smell.
Sure.
The smell kills us.
Yeah.
And so, hypersensitivity essentially was a big thing. I had to limit my diet.
Yeah.
I have been eating, a lot of people might be saddened by this, but for about 3 years, almost 3 years, I have been eating the same lunch and dinner.
What is that? What do you eat normally?
It's a sad thing. I have rice. And that's white rice.
Chicken and rice.
I have chicken, and it's specific chicken. It's like low histamine chicken that's flash frozen when it was butchered.
That's right.
I have variety of vegetables and onions, which is nice. And I am able to integrate steak in a couple times per week, which has been kind of new, like a year.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have had the same food basically every day for like 3 years.
Yeah.
My body just does well that way. And, I have some snacks and I have some good stuff from breakfast that I can have. And so I'm not like malnourished.
Right.
I thought about this too. I'm like, you go back like 200 years and no one's having like a foodie diet.
Yeah, it's true.
They're like, we got potatoes, we got chicken, we got bread.
It's a diet specific to their region.
Yeah.
Even.
They're not eating watermelon in Oregon in December.
Right.
So it's a thing. But I would say the other things for my church, and I had to step down from preaching for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, when I got really sick, we moved down to Arizona. I stopped preaching for a year. I wasn't pastoring for half a year or so until we replanted here in Arizona. I think appearing as physically weak to my children and to other men, I didn't see that as, I didn't expect me to be insecure about that, but I certainly was. I was certainly struggling with, watching the guys my age, like, tag barbell logic and hit their 300-pound deadlift. And I'm over here like withering.
Yeah. Struggling to just breathe in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I did realize that by God's grace, faithfulness to the ministry, there wasn't really a stop in our podcasts, our social media stuff, all the things that we were doing as a ministry. I think my children, the people at our church, again, this is all by God's grace in me, sustained me enough to remain faithful to the ministry while being sick. And there was something accomplished there that I can't necessarily put my finger on, but work that was accomplished in me.
Yes.
And through me being ill and weak, that people got a chance to see the sincerity and validity of the message that I preached.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10, Paul talks about when I am weak, then I'm strong in Christ.
Yeah. This was certainly like that season of life is going, okay, Lord, and I did feel like I actually related myself several metaphors. Like I felt like a 64 Nova with it's like an old muscle car with like a Volkswagen Bug engine in it.
Yeah.
Or I felt like I was essentially like an animal tied to a post and I couldn't go anywhere and do anything and work. And then I realized that post was Christ.
Yeah.
And so when you're sick, you're super close to Christ because you're just, all you have is Christ.
Well, I think for that reason, it's important for our kids to see that. Like when I have headaches, I want them to know that, while I might be struggling and have this form of weakness that I'm dealing with, I am strengthened in Christ.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the experience pleasant. It doesn't make the experience easy, but it does when you are out of it, you can then realize that your rest is not dependent upon how healthy you are necessarily. It is solely based on who Christ is and what he's done for us.
Yes.
That is the greatest comfort. And when that's all you have, like it should still be enough.
Your eyes are fixed on eternal life, not this life, like the life to come.
Yeah. And for our kids to see that in us, I think is of great benefit.
Yeah.
Because it shows them, Dad might be not doing well today, but there's still hope.
And the message that he believes in doesn't change when he's sick.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Fourth question. How are you doing now?
I am certainly better. I would say I'm 80%. When I left Oregon, I would say 50%.
Yeah.
I got up to, I felt like 90%, and then I dropped back down. And you start to feel better. You start to change your supplements and you start to change certain things that you're doing. And you think, I'm getting better. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like
loosening up.
Yeah, you loosen it up and then you get sick again. And so I'll tell you this, just so you said something earlier. It's not just about having good days. It's about having good hours.
Yeah.
Every day I'm generally feeling bad at least 1 hour a day.
Yeah. Wow.
But if I'm feeling good the vast majority of the day, that's great.
Yeah. It's a win.
It's a win. So if I just feel kind of like, I just don't feel good or I'm slow or you have a symptom, it's not day by day, it's hour by hour.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's a big shift for me. You know, I have some other things, like I got amalgam fillings in my mouth that I got to get out, but I've been too sick to even deal with them. So I got to get those out of my...
Because there's risk involved with that type of procedure.
We're the only generation that people are like, hey, let's put lead and, or whatever. What was it?
Yeah.
Is it? No, it's not lead. Is it lead? No, it's arsenic. And anyways, I feel like my brain's not as sharp as it should be. We're also in this building, which has had a little bit of issues with some mold.
And it's very humid today.
It's very humid today. Yeah. And so I could feel sick tomorrow. But I'm trying to add some more stuff to my diets. I'm trying to change my supplements. And I will say, the thing that I think has helped me a lot is pickleball.
Yeah.
Pickleball.
Yeah.
Yes. I started, because I was basically dying. So I'm like a 60-year-old man inside of a 38-year-old's body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I started playing pickleball. And so...
Which out here, there are a ton of retirees that are playing the game.
Yeah. And at the beginning, I was...
playing it better than us.
Yeah. At the beginning, I was getting crushed by 70-year-old women.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've now been playing for probably 2 years.
Right.
And played some tournaments and, you know, I'm in it now. I'm like, honestly, when I'm functioning decent, I'm playing 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, an hour and a half a day. And I love it. I'm competitive. If you're a pickleballer, you got to come hang out with us in Arizona. But yeah, that's been I'm doing okay.
A bright side of...
Still pray for me. I still have a long road to go.
Totally.
It might be a couple more years before I'm up to that 90%.
Yeah. Yeah. Question number 5. What are you going to be covering in the next 3 episodes?
So when I was writing this outline, I was thinking about, okay, we have a series, 4 episodes. One is the next episode. I want to talk about a biblical exhortation on suffering, contentment, and hope.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that if you don't have a theology of suffering, you should, because you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
Like it's not if, it's when. And it's unfortunate to have to figure that all out when you're sick.
Yep.
Or when someone dies.
Right.
And so, I used to have like a dualism, like, oh, the devil's doing things and God's doing things and God wishes that he could stop the devil's work, but he can't.
Yeah.
And then you realize like, no, actually it's the devil that comes up to God and asks permission to afflict Job. And that nothing comes to pass without God's approval and permission. And there's like God's permissive will and decisive will. And there's all this stuff, and God's sovereign over your sickness in the sense that he allows those things to happen or ordains them even to happen. And he actually accomplishes a sanctifying work in sickness and suffering. And so there's all of that you need to really have figured out before you're in the fire.
Right.
So I want to talk about that. Contentment, because man, trying to be content when you're sick is hard.
Yeah. I would say I still wrestle with that.
Like praising God, not just in your suffering, but check this, praising God for the suffering.
Yep.
That is a major distinction.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a quote, I can't remember from who exactly, but it was, realizing what the Lord can do through suffering, and, even going so far as to say, are we willing to go through these moments of suffering? Are we willing to experience these things in order to grow closer to God?
Yeah, and we're not masochists.
No,
that we're saying like that we're praising God for our suffering. Give us more. No,
right.
We're saying that we trust God so much.
But when it comes,
because
it will,
we know that God will work all things together for good for those for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose.
Right.
And so we can praise Him for that suffering. Yeah. So that'll be the next episode. We'll talk about suffering.
Yeah.
The third episode will be a practical guide to biblical lifestyle for good health.
Okay.
And so that'll be like, what should we do as Christians just to live a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not an expert, but being sick makes you very acutely aware
Right.
of a lot of the methods. Honestly, I don't even seek much medical care because
Right.
at this point, I haven't met a doctor that knows more about my condition than me.
Right.
And with the internet and the books that I've read, you know, it's more like I work with a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't submit to a doctor
Certainly.
because, you know, I've read thousands and thousands of pages on this. When I was ill, I was like, everything was like, get better.
Yeah.
So a practical guide, like basics, just basics on how to be healthy.
Yep.
And then the last one will be addressing the medical system and supplements, because the medical system, there's obviously a massive distrust, like institutional distrust in our generation.
Right.
We were just talking about that.
Yep.
Like experts, CDC. Like, yeah, we don't trust you, you know?
Sir. Yeah, certainly not.
The doctors we've lost trust for, you know, pastors we've lost trust for. So how do you deal with a secular medical system or a, you know, the medical system essentially is good at acute. You break your arm, I want to go to the hospital.
Yep.
You're chronically ill, they're not going to have nothing for you, at least my experience. You know, they want to give you a pharmaceutical, they want to get you all the things, right?
Yeah.
So talking about the naturopathic approach, God's design for the earth and the world and healing.
And the supplement side of things has its own set of issues too.
Yes.
Where they'll claim, you know, this fish oil or something like that will cure all of your issues. And it you know, just like the medical system, it is not a one size fits all.
Every body is different, right? That's like what the kids say or the doctor says to the kids.
Yeah.
Your body is different than his body and her body. Every body is different. And that's true. It's like we all have different bodies.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the plan for the next couple episodes.
Amen.
Any last thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think with what I've gone through in the past 10 years of my life is something that I certainly would not, I don't want to minimize the ways that God has used my illnesses, the chronic issues with headaches and things like that to prepare me for something great. And so if you are currently in the process of going through an illness, struggling with something that is chronic, there is hope. Whether it be in this life you find healing, or in the life to come in Christ, there's always hope.
Not everybody gets better.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to swallow.
Hard truth. Yep.
But not everybody gets better.
Yep.
And so, yeah, how do we redirect our...
God is still good.
Yeah, God is still good. How can we continue to sing,
Yeah.
All glory be to Christ in the midst of a terminal diagnosis?
Yeah.
And so hopefully this is edifying and helpful. We're excited to go through it just because I think it's a topic that maybe the church has avoided.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it's a series that you can send to family members and friends or whoever has a mysterious illness. This might be a very helpful series to send them. And so thanks for joining us on this episode. If you haven't left a review, if you're a regular listener, we'd love it if you left us a review. I think last time I checked, we're over 6,000 reviews, maybe even 7,000. I can't remember, but those reviews really do help the exposure of this show. And you can also watch this on YouTube. So you can watch it. You can watch it. Again, it'll be in our app. You can listen to it on our website. You can listen to it anywhere that podcasts are available. And so we just thank you guys for being a part of it. So again, I'm Dale Partridge. This is Trevor West.
Yep.
You're watching Real Christianity. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.